Welcome back to another edition of the Fanatics View Hockey Show. Happy to welcome back one of our favorites here on the program. And who better to talk about the Ottawa Senators in their series right now with the Toronto Maple Leafs. A tough game last night. We'll talk about that and everything that goes into it. Of course, Andrew Sztein back here on the program. You can follow him on Twitter, on the social platforms at Sztein Creative. That's SZTEIN. How's it going, buddy? Good to have you back on.
It's going all right. It's fun to be back on Twitter just for the playoffs, coming back to that hellscape, because that's where the hockey conversation takes place. So let me have it, Leaf fans. Let me have it.
Well, a bunch of stuff we got to get into. First off, you do write for the Hockey News, so we'll definitely plug that throughout the show. And we've had you on here obviously multiple times, but I want to go back to, you went to game one of this series. Tell me what that was like, because you and I, we went to university at the same time. There was a Battle of Ontario, going on, and it's really something special. If you're not Canadian, you don't really understand it, but what was it like being in that atmosphere, obviously as the enemy in this case?
Well, before we get into what the atmosphere was like in the arena, I don't know if you happen to see it online. You can probably grab it on Twitter if you want to share it with the viewers, but I literally put Senators flags on the front of my house.
I did. I will get to that right now. Yeah.
And the day later, my very awesome neighbors who did this in the right spirit put up a big sign that says "Our neighbors suck, go Leafs go," and that was the kind of playoff atmosphere that I've been missing, and a lot of Sens fans have been missing for the last 8 years. So that was a hoot. We even had our ward counselor stop in front of our house and snap pictures and post it. So that was a good precursor to what was going to be happening in game one. So I did indeed go to game one, and I have to admit the atmosphere was unreal. And I've been to a bunch of Leafs games here in the regular season, and I've been to 8 or so of the NHL arenas, and I've always said that Toronto had the worst atmosphere. You got the suits cutting real estate deals in the concourse.
People getting hand-me-out tickets. I lived in Toronto too. It was the exact same thing. Like, if you had Leafs tickets, you probably knew someone that gave them to you, right? Yeah. That's typically how it goes there.
Yeah, and suit jackets and ties tend to at least be even with the number of jerseys in the stands and stuff like that. Not the case on Monday. The atmosphere, the whole building was rocking. It was like a Metallica concert. Everybody's waving their towels, everybody's making a lot of noise. But what I also appreciated is that I'm there in a Senators jersey, and 19 out of 20 Leaf fans were just like, okay, we're going to give you a good-natured chirp, but then we're going to give you your props for showing up, representing your team, staying to the final buzzer, things like that. And I'm like, oh, there are real quality hockey fans in the building here who root for their team the right way. And just wow, the shaking atmosphere. The only 2 sports events I can think of that I've been to that had a better atmosphere, and this is just game one. I went to a second round Blue Jays win in the playoffs, 7-0 against Kansas City, which 10 years ago now. Yikes. And I've been to an Ottawa Senators Eastern Conference final where they took a 4-0 lead in the first period, and that was the whole building just a constant vibration and shaking. Nobody's in their seats, that sort of thing. And it was very, very similar to that. And with that said, I also think Brady can say he wasn't affected by the chants, and the fans can, and the players can say, oh, we weren't affected by the noise. Yeah, you were. And that's okay. Right. It's your first ever playoff game. You have the fans chanting Allmark, and you have the fans chanting Brady sucks all night. You can't be mentally prepared for that until you're actually in it. And absolutely the crowd noise was a factor in game one, big time. And I cannot be convinced otherwise.
Well, and I was going to say, this sort of sets up what I want to get into for the series, just to give people an idea. If you've never experienced Battle of Ontario, and by the way, if you can get playoff tickets, go. I went last year. One of the best sporting events I've ever been to. It's Canucks and Oilers game one. Canucks, remember, had that big comeback. It was awesome. And I will say too, it's good to hear that fans are cool about the whole Battle of Ontario. I think if it was in the heyday of what was the Battle of Ontario back in the day, it would be totally different, because there was a lot of people. Sens fans hated Darcy Tucker. Leafs fans hated Chris Neil. Right? There was that sort of thing. I don't think we're at that point yet, but I like that we're getting this series. Really, yeah, exactly. And we saw that last night with Full But let's get into it. So obviously the first game doesn't go very well for Ottawa. Allmark, I think we can both agree, did not play very well. And I don't know, I'm not going to say that's the reason they lost, but it certainly didn't help. You guys played better than Toronto last night. You guys deserve to win that game last night. I can fully admit that as someone who's, just kind of watching both sides here.
Yeah.
Max Domi, the dagger in overtime. But my question to you is, do you think they take this as a positive, even though they lost, and bring this back home? And now they can take this as, look, like we had them. We just got to finish it. Like that would be my takeaway if I was the Sens last night.
I think with the veterans they have and the coaching staff that in particular that they have, and if you got Steve Staios and Mike Andlauer in a moment of candid honesty,
Mm-hmm.
the Sens probably were not the favorite even behind closed doors within the organization, right? This is a step in the process, and a lot of fans don't understand that, right? They're like, oh, we have to beat the Leafs. We have to beat the Leafs. It's like, well, the Leafs have been here before. Even if they haven't had a lot of success before, they do have more experience than you guys and things like that. So in this particular case, I think everything is a win, right? Even the defeats that you've experienced in the series so far are victories and learning experiences and things like that, right? Cup winners weren't built in a day. Just ask the Leafs, right? Or the Canucks, or virtually any team that isn't Las Vegas, right? Like, but that franchise is kind of a freak show of like. Side note, Vegas ditches their players all the time, treats them like disposable commodities. The Rangers do it to one guy, their whole season implodes. Like, it's
true.
like,
well, too, if you think about it, because Goudreau was the one that started this whole thing. He didn't want to get traded. Then they put him on waivers, and then they and then they traded Trouba, right? But yes, I completely understand what you're saying.
And I wrote about this in my most recent article. Is what is important here is learning what playoff hockey really is. And in game one, it was obvious that you've been told what it is, you suspect what it is, you don't know what it is. And I thought they responded really well in game two. But even then, right? Even then, you didn't win. And how much further into your reserves of energy do you need to pull into to get a win, right? And long term, I think even if the series is a sweep or whatever, I think it's a very positive learning experience for these young players. The previous battles of Ontario, both teams were contenders and in kind of a similar place in their window. So those, I think, were a lot more of we have to win this series, right? The Senators season's a success already. Like,
yeah, I agree. I kind of feel like they're playing with monopoly money in a way where it's like, yes, I know the expectation was you get in the playoffs, but they have such a young team. Like, you're exactly right. My sort of big takeaway watching last night was this is a young team still. This is a team that's learning. They're going to get that experience. And, this is one of those things, like, not every young team gets in and goes on a crazy run. That just doesn't happen. It's leveling up every year. And I think they're learning so much. And you know what, Andrew, too, like, you cut down the penalties in that game last night. That could be an Ottawa win. So I think that's another thing too, where it's not like Allmark played bad last night, or like the team didn't have enough offense. They outshot the Leafs last night. To me, I'm watching this game and I'm going, these are fixable things. This is a much closer series than it needs to be. And I'll flip this the other way. Toronto doesn't win. I mean, Toronto should win. Let's be honest here. I'm not oblivious to that.
Yeah.
They don't win. There's a lot of implications here. Is Mitch Marner back? Right. You don't want to. Tree Living's going to have. He doesn't want to have another situation like last time with Goudreau, where it's like you lose a player for nothing. I'd see there's more on the line here for Toronto than Ottawa, because this isn't Boston or Florida or any of these other Tampa, any of these other teams that they typically lose to. I think that's also what makes this a little bit more intriguing as well for Leafs fans, where it's like finally we get a different opponent. So I think all those things are at play here. But I am curious to see how Game 3 goes, because obviously different circumstances.
On the Mitch Marner point, I think the organization is aware of something that they're not putting out there, because all the Mitch Marner jerseys were 40% off at the game during game one.
Interesting. I didn't know that. See, this is why we get you on. We got to get these little tidbits.
And I was like, oh, they know something. It's been 9 years, and whether Ottawa comes back or whether the Leafs win the cup, or most likely something in between, this has to be the last hurrah for this core. Even if they win the cup this year, like the cap is a thing. Mitch Marner's going to get a raise, and like frankly, I thought Mitch Marner was kind of invisible last night. Game one, he was flying, right? And but that's been a common theme with Marner throughout his whole career, right?
Yeah.
Kind of
one assist, by the way, last night. I'm just looking at the stat line here. One assist, and then just one shot on goal. You know, you look at a guy like Dylan Cousins didn't score yesterday. He got 5 shots on goal last night. So
yeah, but also Dylan Cousins got totally victimized on that OT goal.
That's true. That too. Yeah.
So
hey, but credit to Domi for staying with it. I mean, that was a kind of, you know, if you look at it, nice goal. And I think the other thing that we forget too is was it Benoit, who's the defenseman that went in front of Allmark? He kind of screened him a bit too, and I think that helped with the goal too.
Yeah. So you mentioned that Toronto or that Ottawa outshot Toronto. I heard a fascinating stat, and I did a bit of a deep dive. And my next article is going to be about insane, unsustainable numbers in the Battle of Ontario in the playoffs that completely go against all hockey logic. And the biggest one was Toronto has now beaten Ottawa 18 times in the playoffs in individual games. Yeah. Ottawa has outshot Toronto in 16 of them. That stat is insane. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, if you think about it, though, if you look at those early Leafs teams in the 90s, I mean, that was, I mean, for people who, for you younger folk out there, the Leafs had this insane run of just like goalies that were playing on top of their head, and they were getting, they were relying on that essentially. They went from, I mean, think about it, they went from Curtis Joseph to Ed Belfour, like, you know, two legends. It's just crazy the amount of goaltending they had, right?
It is, but to have an 18-8 record and you're outshot in 16 of those wins,
that's true. Yeah,
that just goes against conventional hockey wisdom about how you win hockey games. Historically, in the playoffs, I don't know if it includes last night's game, but Ottawa's shooting percentage is a hilariously low and unsustainable 5%. All right, and the Leafs are at 10%. Again, overall historical picture. And it's just wild to me that you can make a case that the Leafs are the most cursed team in the NHL, unless they're playing Ottawa. And then all of a sudden, like Ottawa's got an 80 PDO right now in this series, right? Like combined shooting and save percentage. And the Leafs are like 120, like ridiculously unsustainable numbers, but consistently. Like this isn't like, oh, one game here, one game there. Like the Leafs get the goals on their opportunities and Ottawa doesn't. Now there's more to that. Like last night, I thought Ottawa played very well. They had a lot of sustained pressure, but let's be real, 90% of their shots were perimeter shots. They were shooting into crazy traffic. The Leafs defense has done an insanely good job at clearing rebounds in front of Stolars, being the first on the puck, and that sort of thing. And also, if I'm going to be like talking about what Ottawa needs to do better, the penalty kill, like Toronto has that diamond figured out. You got to change it up, like completely figured out.
Who's running the penalty kill, by the way? Is it Mike Yeo or do you have, because I think Yeo ran the power play last year with Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken. So I wasn't sure who was running penalty kill for you guys.
Well, Baumgartner runs the defense, so I would assume.
Oh yeah, Baumgartner's a coach for you guys too. I forgot about that. Another ex-Canuck. I mean, it's basically the Canucks coaching staff, right? If you look at it, combined, right? Because Yeo came after Green, but still, like, it's kind of interesting because Baumgartner was a long-time Canucks defenseman. Played a bit, mainly played in the AHL, but he was there too. So okay, that's interesting. Yeah, okay, because him and Green are both. Right?
Exactly, but I mean, the penalty kill last night, they let in a goal in 18 seconds, and that was their best kill that they got scored on. The other, in game one, they got scored on 3 times within roughly, I think one was 11 seconds, but within 10 seconds of the power play starting. Leafs win the draw clean, and they rip a great shot, and Ottawa has no presence in front of the net because they only have the one guy back. They have the 2 diamond players at the dots, but it's not working, guys. Like you gotta make some adjustments like that.
Yeah. It's interesting to see what adjustments they're going to make. Let's get a couple questions here. I don't want to neglect our audience here. Shout out to Jay, by the way, one of my guys from my Discord. Do you think the Capitals have this series in the bag? I'm going to say no, just because Montreal made that pretty close last game. They might not even win tonight. Montreal's a feisty team. They're fast. And they've got a couple of, like, you know, X factors in the sense of like guys that just, I think there's a lot of potential there. So I'm not going to count it as much as I've been very vocal. I'm not a big fan of Montreal, but I can't deny they're a talented team and they're a team that could surprise. But I mean, Ovechkin, that might have been one of Ovechkin's best games I've seen in game one. Like it's just insane what he's doing. Again, we'll tie this to Ottawa a little bit. First time I ever saw Ovechkin play his rookie season when I was going to university with you. And Ottawa beat them, I think, like 4-1. The only guy to score in that game was Ovechkin. And it was a typical Ovechkin goal where Caps win the faceoff in the send zone. Ovechkin gets it just outside, just inside the red line and ends up scoring one like top shelf. I don't know who the goalie was at the time for Ottawa. I couldn't remember, but it was, I mean, it's just insane what he's doing at his age. And I think that's feeding to the rest of the players. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It'd be Hasek or Emery that year, I think. Yeah. But for myself, yes, I think the Capitals have this in the bag. Montreal's like too. Ottawa, happy to be there. Your season's already a success, no matter what you've done. The Capitals have too many weapons, and I don't like Montreal's defense in their own end. Now, with that said, Lane Hudson looks like a young Erik Karlsson out there, and that guy is a good. Capital S stud, which is upsetting for a couple of Habs haters like us, I guess. But I wouldn't call myself a Habs hater. But
I am. I'll fully admit it. My brother-in-law's a Habs fan. I don't like the ole thing. I think they never get any flack for anything they do, although they have made some really good moves. Although I still maintain that trading for Drouin way back when was still a horrible move for them. That's they're feeling the implications of that as well. But yeah, I can't deny they're a young team that's certainly on the rise. So I got to give them some props. That's why I'm not counting them out completely. I think the Caps will win, but I think Montreal will make it interesting, possibly even win tonight. I did see the betting line is very close.
The league is a better place when Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa are all good.
And Vancouver. Dude, you know what I'm doing right now? This is how depressing it is as a Canucks fan. I'm going back and watching highlights from last year because I'm just reminded of how good it is. And, I did feel for the Sens fans. I know, obviously, we'll see that next game with it being at home, but there's this buildup when you haven't been in the playoffs for so long. And I remember game one against Nashville last year, and it was like you would have thought it was the Cup final. Like, it was just crazy, the amount of energy that was in there. The players feel it. It's just good to see hockey back in respectable markets as well. So I'll say that. Totally. Jacob, my friend from my Discord, who is a notorious John Cooper hater. So horrible loss for the Bolts. The Bolts get destroyed in this series. We better see him fired. He's doing this as like a rage bait here. Great coach, long tenured coach, which can mean time for change. John Cooper's not getting fired if they are out of the first round. It's not on Cooper. They again, this is a team that won the Cup. Every year you slowly lose bit by bit. They've actually recouped some of their assets. They got McDonough back. They've got Gord and obviously Bjorkstrand from Seattle. If they lose, it's because they fought they lost against a very good team here. John Cooper's not getting fired. There's a reason he was the coach for the Four Nations, Jacob. Like, he is thought of as like royalty in the NHL. And you better believe if he even for a second gets fired, some team's going to pick him up even quicker than Jim Montgomery got picked up by St. Louis. That's how quick it would be. He's not getting fired.
If the Jack Adams was actually the award for best coach instead of the coach of the most improved team every year, John Cooper would be like the Nick Lidstrom of coaches. Like, he'd just win every year. I
agree.
But hey, if they want to get rid of him, I'm sure either of us would be thrilled to hire John Cooper
to bring him over. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Apparently there's someone had the list the other day. I think there's 7 coaching vacancies right now. We'll talk some around the league stuff too, because there's some stuff that happened I wanted to get your thoughts on. Let's get to a few more questions and we'll kind of put a bow on the Senator stuff. No X equals loss. Washington is favored by a large margin. Not to win the series, yes, but I think on the betting odds tonight I think they're only like a -125 if I'm not mistaken, unless the odds have gone up. But because I looked this morning, Caps are like -183. They were lower this morning though when I bet them, so I think they're going to win. 3 straight bad first round losses would mean time for a change. Yeah, but that's again, I don't think they're going to pin this on the coach. Like, look at Mike Sullivan. Look at Pittsburgh's failures. That's a guy who I still don't think he's going to get fired in the offseason, but there's certain coaches that have such a respect among the league and players that are almost untouchable. This isn't like I don't know, like Peter Laviolette. Like, to be honest, I do think coaching was part of the problem in New York, but the guy who should have been let go is Drury. He handled everything horribly, and they are in desperate need of not trading for over 30 players, over 30-year-old players. There we go.
And the Rangers also have ownership issues,
like
deep pockets, meddling ownership, and that's when you're in the position where you can't even sell hope. Like the Mike Sullivan one, I get. Like, okay, those cups were when Ottawa made the playoffs last time, so. Mike Sullivan, you haven't really gotten your team there the last couple of seasons. What was it? 3 straight first round losses, 2 years out
Something
now?
like that. Yeah.
So like 5 years without a second round game. Okay, Mike Sullivan, maybe it's time to move on. Like, but you don't want to do what Boston did, where like, oh man, panic button, fire Montgomery, and now St. Louis is the team in the playoffs, and Boston was
well. That's another team too. The GM's at fault. Like Sweeney shouldn't have a job. Like after, like again, they dragged the Swayman thing out. They publicly said like, oh, we're far apart on money, and then they sign him, and he has a terrible season. And then again, Montgomery's not the issue. It's and then you trade Brad Marchand for like next to nothing. Like they're the ones that should be blamed here. By the way, side note on
for a first round pick and a goalie that actively hurt your team in Korpisalo. Like,
yeah, and the whole thing was like, oh, he might not resign, and then he resigned in a couple months, right? Allmark, that is, right? So
he signed before the season started. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, because I think the trade was before free agency, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a half an hour before Game 7 in the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Side note, and you'll appreciate this as well. I've talked about this on the show before, and I don't mind showing my bias a little bit. Kyle Dubas is so overrated as a GM. Speaking of Pittsburgh, they don't get nearly enough flack for some of the moves they made. I look back to 2 summers ago before the Karlsson trade. They had all this cap space, and they wasted it. They traded for Karlsson. They got, who's the guy from New Jersey they got that hasn't panned out? Graves, I think. I forget. But then they signed Jari, who, like, listen, we loved Christian Jari around these parts because, again, he's from here. He's been played well. He's
Christian
just been
Jari lost me my hockey pool this year. Just saying. I'm like,
oh,
he's gonna get starts. He's the number 1. He's got the big contract. No, he's in the AHL. There goes all my points.
Yeah, and granted, I will give Dubas credit for now getting picks and trying to build stuff around, but they're still not a playoff team by any means. So it just bothers me that Pittsburgh never gets any flack for any of the moves. It's like, oh yeah, but if it was any other team, like you should see what the media is saying about Vancouver right now. They missed the playoffs by a couple points, and you'd think that they're like Buffalo right now. It's crazy. So
yeah,
anyways.
He's really bad at managing the cap, I think, is Dubas's biggest issue. And man, he gets taken over a barrel on player negotiations. Like his time with the Leafs, there is no way that they should have had 4 $10 million plus forwards.
And I agree.
Or 3, I guess Nylander was a little lower. But like coming out of your entry level, like you just handed all your leverage to them. And now the Leafs got to pay Austin Matthews $13.5 million a year because you set the bar at whatever it was, like 11 million then or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true.
Yeah.
Jacob predicts Bolts will be the new Penguins. I don't think so, man. They lost. They've lost the game in the playoffs. Like I didn't even see what the series is at now. Is it isn't it 1-1?
No, it just started.
Sorry. That's right. They're sorry. I was just getting that confused with a different series. Yeah, they are. Tampa Bay's 0-1 right now.
Why are you doing game 1 for one series when every other game is playing game 2? Like,
I don't get that either.
Like, I don't get it.
Also, side note, I know we're going to do a lot of these throughout this chat, but why can't they just do the play-in like the NBA does? It would be so much better. Like Vancouver's playing these meaningless games, like, late in the season, they're already out. How much more fun would it be if Calgary and Vancouver meant something if they played each other as, trying to get in? They should look at that format. I don't really see the downside to it because you're going to get better attendance. You're going to get people more glued in. You're going to get better viewership. Like I would love to see the ratings for some of these games with some of these teams that were already eliminated. They can't be very good. Like, yes, a bottom feeder team like a San Jose, fair enough, you're going to tune out, but there's teams that were like, if you look at the points for how it ended up, like Calgary barely missed, Columbus barely missed. Columbus had Montreal not beat Carolina, which they should have lost to Carolina. I don't know what happened in that game. Columbus would have been in if they beat the Islanders, right? So
didn't Calgary tie the record for most points in a playoff loss?
They did, yeah,
missing the playoffs ever. Like if you do another round of expansion, you cannot sell your product in a way where more than half the teams don't make the playoffs. Like look at what happened with MLB over the years, right? When I think it was only eight teams, or it was 10 teams with like a 1-game play-in, I think, in MLB, and just interest just craters. When I say this all the time, the contract between a professional sports franchise and their paying fan base is, we are selling you hope. And when your playoff format is like that, and less than half the teams even make it to the dance, you don't even have an opportunity to sell hope at that point, right? Like you're leaving money on the table, and you're leaving eyeballs and excitement and social media engagement on where, I mean, I'd rather we didn't have 32 teams to begin with here, but it's if you're going to have that many franchises, you need to give more opportunities just to get to the dance, right? In the end, there's going to be one cup winner either way, right? So
Yeah, it's true. Just again, like you're right, selling at hopes. Kane's lost because he sat 7 players. That's true. Yes, I forgot about that. Let's quickly look at this. You had this website up. We were going to talk about the money puck. So this is just sort of looking at, it's really sort of a deep dive on all the stats and all the
Make sure
teams
you
and
switch
stuff.
it to the playoffs.
Oh yeah, that would help too. Let's get into the playoffs and have a look here. So you can see, Winnipeg sort of leading the way, but they had one of the best records, or they did have the best record this year.
All you need to see is right there. Goals for percentage for the Sens, 28.5. Corsi, 62.25. Like, and that boils down to Stolarz is making the saves he's supposed to, and Allmark isn't making any saves that he isn't expected to. And you go on a goal by goal basis with Allmark here, and it's okay. Well, I understand how that one went in. I understand how that one went in. I understand how that other one went in. Dude, you're getting paid $8.25 million to make saves that you're not supposed to be making, and that's the big problem. He has not made a single save in 2 games that somebody would classify as a momentum swinging save.
Yeah, you do need those. Yeah,
you need them, right? And that overtime goal, right? And my buddy Neil, if he's listening, former goalie, whenever I blame the goalie, he always gives me the goalie's perspective and whatnot. And great. He gives me great perspective. On that overtime goal, you have your 2 guys in front of you. You see Domi is cutting across to the other side of the ice. Why aren't you all the way on the other post by the time he makes that shot, right? Like, he just seems a half second behind right now. And that half second is everything in tight games. And Allmark has shown a remarkable ability to bounce back from mediocre performances, and he was way better in game 2 than in game 1.
Yeah, and that's encouraging. Yeah.
But like, these numbers, like, again, your goals for share is 28%, but you're getting 62% of the offensive time, the shots. There was one other one in particular that I saw that stood out to me. If you go over the PDO, which is just a couple of columns to the right.
Okay.
Ottawa's at 89.2, right?
Yeah.
And that's after game 2. Before game 2, it was like at 80 or something like that. Nashville, who had brutal season, like a historically bad season of expectations versus results, they were at 97.7 this season. Like, these are ridiculous, unsustainable numbers. And then you look at the Leafs, they're at 110.8 on PDO, right? Like, they're getting caved on shots against. Now, again, quality of shots are an important factor here. But it's fairly clear that this series is being decided by special teams. And I hate blaming refs. I like blaming refs as loser talk, right?
Well,
like,
yes, but we can all admit, everyone knows this. I mean, that shouldn't have been a penalty last night with the Stolarz thing. Yeah,
that was insane. Like,
yeah, I know that was a terrible call.
Stolarz could have literally shredded his MCL on that third slash right on the side of his knee, right? And then, okay, Ridley Gregg comes back, but like, I think that's accepted hockey parlance, right? That you take a couple of smacks in front of the crease, the play is over, you're going to go confront the person, and there's a scrum. Like, and like, I saw a lot of comments online about that call too, where it's like, well, but Ridley Gregg ran him in the previous game. And I'm like, is retribution allowed? Does that nullify penalties in another game because he did something in a previous game? And and in game 1, like, Ottawa took too many penalties and they were very undisciplined. But also, like, that Stützle hit where he let up, and that was a 2-minute, and and initially calling a 5-minute major, which I get is to get the review like, to have the option to review the Ridley Gregg cross check on Tavares. Absolutely a 2-minute penalty. And to Ottawa's credit, they responded, right? They did play a much more disciplined game in game 2. In game 1, it was you could tell they were just getting frazzled and weren't sure what the standard was. And that's what officiating in the playoffs needs to be. Make the calls or don't, but just let the players be aware of what game they're playing in. What are you allowed to get away with versus what you're not? And I think in that particular way, the officiating has been a failure in this series so far. But in terms of like calls for calls, like that Stolarz thing was dumb. Otherwise, I have no complaints about the officiating last night. I think it was called fair, and it was. I loved that the referees admitted making mistakes. They did miss that call where Matthews literally flung Marner's stick right back into his hands. Awesome skill play. Definitely a penalty, that sort of thing. But at the same time, they reviewed like Ottawa's puck over the glass and realized that it was deflected off a stick and that sort of thing. So my hat does go off to the refs in that game, that Stolarz play notwithstanding. But again, looking at this chart here, right? It's just some of these numbers are just so conducive to Ottawa winning a game and Toronto getting blown out, and yet they're not. And that's been the history of the Battle of Ontario in the playoffs. Always.
Yes, which by the way, we got our slide up here. Great stat here. So this is showing. You can find this. Well, maybe I'll leave a link to the description, but it has all the playoff series that they've had dating back to 92-93.
If you scroll down just a little lower, here's another one for you. There's the shooting percentage regular season. If you zoom in a little bit. The head-to-head stats totals. Yeah. Ottawa's shooting percentage historically against the Leafs since 1992, 9.8%. Now switch it over to the playoffs. 5.7. Unsustainable. Are you kidding me? 1.77 goals for, with all the skill that Ottawa's had over the years and things like that, and the Leaf scoring has gone down too, right? 7 shutouts to 1. In 20 playoff games, Ottawa has won 1 overtime game against the Leafs. So it's like a coin flip that just keeps coming up heads, right? So much of this, and I think, for veteran Sens fans in particular, that's the frustrating part, right? Is you watch your team do a lot of these things that should be enough to at least make it a series. And then it turns out that it doesn't. And then you watch the Leafs blow a 4-1 lead to Boston. You see them lose to Columbus. You see them blow a 3-1 series lead to Montreal. You see them lose series where they're favored. Just spectacular choke jobs, and yet these numbers bear out that all that misfortune they have, it's the complete opposite when Ottawa is the opponent.
But to be fair, there was no. If you look at historically though, if you look at the Leafs playoffs runs when they were successful in the late '90s and all that, they didn't really have those meltdown games, right? Like I remember them losing to Carolina or some the Flyers or whatever. I mean, maybe the Flyers series, that was one I think they were favored to win and they didn't end up getting it done. But I think that if you look at recently, there's some weird trend where they can't seem to get over the hump. And then Ottawa obviously hasn't been there. They haven't played each other. So I think that plays into it a bit. But I would say too that, again, Ottawa's a new team to the playoffs as far as the team they have now. Eventually it could get to the point. I mean, it could happen in this series, Andrew. We don't know. Maybe next game they, the Ottawa just surprises everyone when they take the how they played last game and they finally put it together and they get it done. We could see a weird game there. But I think eventually with the way these two teams are going, because Toronto's an older team, Ottawa might catch them at some point, and it could be the opposite, where Ottawa's the successful team and Toronto's having to retool. But we'll see.
I think so. And also, if you played Toronto this well in game 2, and both teams did play well, it was a great hockey game. Right, I give the Leafs their props. Right, they didn't just sit back and got a couple of bounces. They did play. They took the play to Ottawa, especially in the third period, and things like that. But if Ottawa played them that well on the road, maybe last change is really the only other advantage you need to get a couple in the W column.
Yeah.
And so there's positives to take, right? And you can tell when you see the conversations on Twitter who had lived through the previous Battle of Ontario's and who hasn't, right? People who have I've been a Sens fan since 2017 and I'm so excited we're in the playoffs. We should absolutely win this. No, it's you don't understand the process of building a cup champion, right? It took us 8 years to make the first step, making it. right? And there's a bunch more steps to come. And what you were hoping for 8 years is the heartbreak of watching your team in the playoffs and get used to it.
Well, it doesn't help when you have teams like Vegas, right? Like expansion year, they go to the finals and they've always been in the playoffs. Like imagine what it's going to be like to be a Knights fan in like 5 years when eventually they're going to crumble and not be a successful team. I'm interested to see how that goes with that fan base because all they've had is winning. It's been crazy.
Well, I don't want to get into geonational politics, but the Vegas Golden Knights have the advantage of being in one of the biggest tourist destinations in the U.S., they should always sell tickets. Yeah. But if nobody's visiting the U.S. for obvious reasons, then... But anyway, we can leave that.
Yeah. You'll move on from that. Just quickly to put a bow on this entire thing, like, do you think Ottawa? I mean, you would know better than anyone. Can Ottawa come back and win this thing? They're down 2-0. Do you think, what percentage would you give them to be able to do it? I mean, I think they'll win a game here, but I think Leafs are probably, riding pretty comfortably in this series. What do you think?
First off, whoever wins this series is going to probably get knocked out in 5 in the next round to whichever Florida team wins. Ottawa or Toronto. So I'm going to preface with that one. Other than that, so much depends on what happens in game 3. Right?
I know that's the thing. Like we're having this conversation after game 3. I think there's more clarity, right?
There is. Ottawa is all these numbers that I've brought up. Mm-hmm. Ottawa is due for a regression to the mean, right? Allmark's save percentage is due to go up, right? Ottawa is due to get some bounces on the power play, like Toronto did, where it went off Allmark's blocker and off Jensen and right into the net, right? Like statistically speaking, they're due for some breaks that they haven't received yet. If they can win game 3, I actually like their chances to at least make a series of it, right? Go to game 6, game 7. If they lose game 3, like pack it up, guys. It's over. Like maybe you come back.
Maybe you get a win. More, I can see that happening. Yeah.
The 3-0 comeback has become more common in the last 15 years. When we were growing up, that was a once in a generation thing, right? It was I think the Leafs in 42. And then there was
Canucks against the Flames in 94. I think they were down 3.
It might have been 3-1.
Yeah, 3-1 or 3-0.
It had only happened twice, and then it's happened something like 5 times.
Yeah.
In the last like 15 years or so, like that. Yeah. So it is parity like that. Be realistic though, right? I said this to a ton of Leaf fans in game 1, right? Is you can't hurt me. Like I'm a fan, right? I don't need to do anything here, right? I'm a writer and a fan, and I am happy to see Ottawa playing in playoff games. You can't hurt me. And if any Ottawa fans are listening to this, that's the approach you need to take here, right? Do not expect to win, right? Mm-hmm. Because let's be real, their official chances are something like 12%. 12% of teams that have lost the first 2 games in a series come back to win. Yeah. So no, probably not. But we've also seen Allmark get crazy hot and go on insane winning streaks, so it's not impossible. If we're putting money on it, I would say the Leafs take it in 6, Ottawa takes the next 2, and then Toronto wakes up again. Don't hate me. Don't at me.
Don't at me. Okay, let's I'm curious to get your thoughts. I don't know how much you've been paying attention. I haven't watched every game. I've been kind of just watching highlights, kind of getting up to date. Let's kind of go around the league. I wanted to get your thoughts on some of these series here. So we'll start in the West. Winnipeg up 2-0 on St. Louis. I think the magic is running out a little bit on St. Louis. I think the thing with St. Louis is like they seem like a very complete team. They're well coached. Jim Montgomery, credit. I'm still, I will never talk crap about Jordan Binnington ever again for winning the 4 Nations for Canada. I mean, he is immune for that too.
Can we see a stick swinging fight with Stolars and Binnington? Like just the sorry.
No. But yeah, like I'm just saying that with that said, like St. Louis doesn't have that it factor. They don't have like a player that's like, going to change the trajectory of the games or anything. I don't really think Winnipeg does either, but Winnipeg's just a stronger team. I think St. Louis might win a game or 2 here. I think Winnipeg probably takes this. Do you think otherwise? I think the Magic's run out on St. Louis. Let's put it that way.
No, and I always tie things back to Ottawa because I feel like I've seen it all in 30 years, 30 plus years. Remember the Hamburglar run, right? You go on this epic, insane, improbable run to make the playoffs, it's very hard to recapture that magic once you're actually in it. Ottawa went 20, or Andrew Hammond went 21-2, and then got lit up in the first 2 games of the playoffs. It's exactly what's happening to St. Louis. You go on that emotional high to we made it, and it's just inevitable human nature to have a letdown after that because you accomplished this goal. And I kind of expected if Montreal's going to capitalize on anything, it's the same thing with the Ovechkin chase, right? Is you hit that emotional high, now you're vulnerable. And yeah, no, Winnipeg's got this in 4 or 5.
This one I'm a bit more interested in because the Stars, and maybe I regret it now, but the Stars were, my pick to win the cup. This was, obviously before the Robertson injury. I think with Dallas, like you got Jake Ottinger, Casey DeSmith. I mean, I saw him firsthand last year in Vancouver. He's hot and cold. Like he can be really good, and then he can just have a meltdown like we saw against Vancouver late in the season.
Forsberg type.
Yeah, exactly. Very good analogy there. Dallas did win the last game. I'm not completely counting out Dallas. I did like the trade for, Rantanen. I think that's something they've missed, was sort of a big swing trade over the last couple of years. I think Colorado probably takes it though now, with the injury and with the fact that Colorado just seems to be clicking. They got Landeskog. There's a lot to like there about Colorado, but this one I'm not as convinced. Like probably out of all the series here, I'd say, Dallas is the one team I could see, potentially, because I think Colorado's favored. I could see Dallas pulling it off, but I'll say Colorado, but I'm not counting Dallas out completely. What do you think of this series?
I think the X factor is the emotional return of Gabriel Landeskog, right? We're talking about human nature and psychology, right? They didn't have to go on an epic, huge run to go into the playoffs. Now they're getting that emotional lift, seeing their captain back, even if he has 0 points, which I think he already has. No, he hasn't played yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think
he hasn't played yet. No,
but just having him around and things like that, you get that emotional lift. Dallas with their injuries against this opponent, I don't see it, right? If Dallas were up against, say, Minnesota or St. Louis even, right, you've got a little more time, you've got the skill advantage, you've got the goaltending advantage. Those are kind of moot against Colorado of all teams. I think it's a long summer for Dallas.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Vegas and Minnesota. I mean, again, if this was, I sort of thought, Minnesota, the Magic's going to run out, but they played well the other night. I still think Vegas will probably take it. That's just too deep of a roster, but Minnesota's got players that have stepped up and played well big time. And obviously Gustafson's on a bit of a good run here too. What are you thinking in this series?
I actually kind of like Minnesota. Like, man, that was a statement last night, right? Like 3 goals in the first period. And
it's weird. Vegas has games like that every now and then. Even in the regular season, they've had some kind of meltdown games. It's just odd for such a deep roster, right? But
no playoff game should start at 11 p.m. Eastern time. I don't care where it's taking place. That's nuts. But yeah, Vegas has played a lot of hockey in the last couple of years. They have players who were on LTIR and are back, but not at 100%. So then again, Vegas has the same thing Ottawa has. I'm still looking at the chart from before. Their PDO is only 90. So they're due for a regression to the mean as well on that. With that said, there's always an upset. Every year, there's at least one where you did not see that coming. And usually it's a team that historically doesn't make it too far, right? And I don't know. I kind of like Minnesota's chances, but maybe that's just wishful thinking after all the success.
No, we had Troy on here, one of my good friends who comes on the show very often. He's a really smart hockey guy. He likes, he thinks that Minnesota could be a dark horse in the playoffs. So I don't disagree with that. I think there's certainly potential with that. And that is one where, again, I think it's closer than maybe the odds indicate on that.
You go back to Minnesota with a split, that crowd, I think, will be a factor as well. Like practically a de facto Canadian market, right? Like in terms of like a natural market that loves hockey, Minnesota's probably number 1 in the league. So I think the crowd can be a factor in that as well. Although Vegas has also been there before, and they probably know how to shut it out better than most.
We have a very tolerant Leafs fan in here. I say that sarcastically. Can Ottawa pull off the upset? Ottawa can't pull whatever shut from there. Yeah, let alone pull an upset. Leafs in 4. Dude, listen, I got to say this. You can't be watching that game last night going like, oh yeah, Leafs in 4. Like there's no way that you can feel that confident. Like, yes, the Leafs won. They got outshot. They got outplayed last night. You can't feel good. Like I have friends that are really big Leafs fans and they're like, yeah, we kind of got lucky in that one. Not lucky, but like, Ottawa probably deserved to win that game. So, can't be too arrogant after that win last night, Alex. Let me just say that.
Also, like, you've seen the Leafs they've grabbed defeat from the jaws of victory so many times in the past year. I don't understand that level of overconfidence.
It's a newer fan base, I'm sure.
It's always cycling, right? And the more social media literate you are, although there was a couple of typos in that sentence.
That's usually your first giveaway. LA and Edmonton. LA looked really, I mean, credit to Edmonton. They did come back. I remember seeing what was 4-0 in I think it was the first or second period for LA. I said this right when the playoffs started. You got two big problems. First big problem, Matthias Ekholm, he's not playing. He's a huge part of this team. In fact, I would argue he's on par as far as importance to the Oilers as Draisaitl and McDavid, just because he's sort of your anchor on defense. Outside of that, you got Bouchard playing more minutes. You've got, Darnell Nurse. Like the defense looks a lot different when he's out. And then obviously the goaltending, which is something I've been talking about for years. I still say this. They could have got Kevin Lankinen last year, league minimum, as like a backup. He'd be a huge upgrade over Calvin Pickard. I think LA's got this. I'd be pretty surprised if Edmonton could come back, because I think that's too much of a blow, losing a guy like Ekholm and not having him in the series. What are your thoughts?
LA, man, like just when you've lost 3 in a row, and Edmonton has proven kind of over and over, especially last year, that they're at their best when they're counted out. So I still don't hate Edmonton's chances, but man, is LA due. They're so due. Probably LA, but I think this is going to 7. And I don't think.
But you don't think Ekholm being out, like, to me, that's like a huge factor for them, that they don't have sort of their go-to guy, and now you're playing, guys like Josh Brown are getting more minutes. Like, to me, that's tough. I don't think the Oilers have the depth to compensate for Ekholm being out, but we'll see.
Josh Brown was a top, like a 4 or 5 defenseman in the worst defensive years Ottawa ever had outside.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
That guy's brutal. Or at least in defensive metrics and stuff. I'm sure he's a wonderful fella. Losing Ekholm is like losing a Chara on a back end full of Carlsons, right? Like that big size, the guy who can effectively box out big forwards and stuff like that. But you still got Draisaitl and McDavid. And
they are difference makers. I just think you can't outscore your problems all the time, and I think that's another thing to kind of look at.
They almost did in game 1.
I know that's true, but you can't. To me, you need a good save. Like you just talked about that with Ullmark, right? Like Ullmark needs to make a big save. You're not getting that from Stuart Skinner, unfortunately. In most cases.
Agreed. Yes. If you were asking me to put money on it, I would say LA, but I think it's going to be a close series. Edmonton has a lot of pride too. Right.
That's true. Keep in mind, I'm a notorious Oilers hater too. So that again, so that's something to just keep in mind. We already talked Toronto, Ottawa, Tampa Bay, Florida. We talked a bit. I still think, here's the tough thing. Like I thought with the injuries, maybe Florida is going to lose this one to Tampa. I think Florida can win. Probably still leaning Lightning. I don't know. That's a tough one for me. Where are you leaning?
Lightning was my pick to go to the finals against Winnipeg. I'm going to stick with that. Yeah. Vasilevsky let in, 5 goals last night?
Yeah.
Is there any goalie in the league who's more trustworthy to bounce back after a performance like that than Vasilevsky? Now, I think whoever wins this series is taking the East. Like the rest of the field in the East underwhelms me. Right?
It's just crazy they have to play each other in the first round. You know what I mean? Like that is again another, and the seeding system in the NHL has got to be revamped, because like this should be the conference final, really.
I agree with that. I like either Florida or Tampa's chances against any other of the 6 teams that I see there. No, Tampa's Florida has been to 2 straight finals.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They have that emotional lift of seeing Tkachuk back, of Ekblad's going to be coming back. I think he didn't play last night.
No, I don't believe he did. Yeah.
And so you're getting a bunch of these players back. There's like some excitement there, and you're also going into your rival's barn. Like there's a lot of emotion that goes into that. Can that be sustained over a 7-game series? Probably, but like, I'm not about to count out the Panthers. But I will go with whoever wins this series is going all the way to the finals, and I still like Tampa in it.
You know what? Just to go against the grain,
turn back the clock like crazy this season. Like
they have, and getting Jake Getzel, I think, is a big part of that. I mean, he's been as advertised, well money spent. Then getting
sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, yeah, like getting and then getting Gordon and Bjorkstrand is like your third line. Like that's a crazy amount of depth that they have.
We were talking about Pittsburgh, right? Like you're holding on to the Malkin, the Letang, the Crosbys when maybe they're not a fit for what you're trying to do anymore. Tampa, ruthless. Stamkos, thanks for the fish.
See you later.
Catch you later, right? And it turned out to be a fantastic move. Look at Nashville. Stamkos' stats cratered this year. Like you take emotion out of it, and that's how you win cups. Like,
as a side note, by the way, and I don't think this would ever happen because I don't think he wants to play in the Canadian market, but there's some rumblings. You know, the Canucks need a second line center, and they don't want to necessarily give up too much to get one. Like, and I don't even know who's available, but like, you can't imagine Steven Stamkos is wanting to be part of like a rebuild. Like Nashville's going to have to rebuild. I don't think there's any question they can, do this thing on the fly with how bad last season was. Could Stamkos be on the move? There is that connection to Tampa. Rick Tocchet obviously was a coach there. Although who knows if Tocchet's going to be back with Vancouver, but that was the rumor, is that, would the Canucks be looking at a Stamkos just as a filler to sort of make up for Miller being out? I don't think Stamkos is what he used to be, but at least, you bring an impact player like him would be interesting. So.
You could sell the Canucks season as a blip and then say, hey, we traded JT Miller, right? We're working on the locker room stuff that happened this year. Look how far we made it with most of these pieces in place. And hey, Steven, you want to stay in Nashville, right? Like long-term contracts, bottom of the league, that sort of thing. Like I wouldn't hate that move.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they could give up.
The Canucks more than offensive talent, I think, need that that veteran voice in the dressing room, and that would be more valuable to the Canucks than it would be for the Predators right now.
I agree.
And you could probably get them at like 25% like retained for like a mid-round pick. Like
possibly. We'll see. Depends. Because again, the free agent market isn't very good right now, so the price might go up a little bit. Okay, last one, Carolina, New Jersey. I think Carolina's got this. I think this is maybe one of the most lopsided series. You have Jack Hughes in your lineup. Maybe this is a different, situation, but glad to see New Jersey upgrading their goaltending this season with Markstrom. I think he's great, but I don't think Markstrom's the old Markstrom. And I think that Carolina is just too good. I know Carolina, for whatever reason, can't seem to get over the hump, but they definitely can win the first round, possibly the second round too. So I think Carolina, I don't know if they'll sweep, but I think they will. I'd be pretty surprised if Carolina lost the series.
I would be too, but don't forget Carolina lost 7 of their last 8 games to close out the regular season.
But then they sat players though, like I think like the guy in here mentioned too. I know those guys who were injured.
In the last 2 games, right?
Yeah.
But I like Carolina's chances because both of these teams should be the bottom 2 seeds, at least New Jersey for sure. Carolina's more of an on paper should be a wild card team. Like Frederik Andersen doesn't scare anybody.
Nope. And they've never addressed it. That's another team that I don't know why they haven't at least why are you not getting John Gibson at least or something to at least have some insurance? Because you've got Anderson, then you got an unproven goalie, right? So
you need a platoon guy to play with him, right? Like he can get hot and win you a few games. He's not going to win you 16 on his own all the way to the cup. I guess we did talk about Washington, Montreal already, but
we did. Yeah, I think Washington takes it, but I think Montreal will put up a good fight. Andrew,
agreed.
This was awesome. I appreciate it. So we'll get this is what I think we'll do. If somehow the Sens pull this off, we'll definitely get you back on sooner rather than later. If the Sens are out even, I'll still get you back on at some point because I want to talk about looking ahead to next season. Obviously, a lot of implications for the Sens in terms of some of their moves and salary cap and all that. And it's it's optimistic. I think it's cool. You guys finally have a good owner and good system in place. There's optimism. Not so much here in Vancouver. Everyone hates the owner. They want him to sell the team. They Jim Rutherford's out there throwing everyone under the bus. So things are a little murky here. But just remind people anything you got coming up for the hockey news, where they can get a hold of you on social media and anything else, man. I'll give you the last word.
Thank you. Well, on a fun little personal note, last month I shadowed the Ottawa Senators DJ. I run a DJ business.
That's right.
As my main employment. So I was up in the booth and perhaps here and there, you might see me DJing at a Sens game. We'll see if that happens. Yes, I still have the hockey news going on. I am currently active on Twitter after several months away. Once the playoffs are done, I will probably go back on snooze on there, but you can follow me at Sztein Creative and check out my stuff on the hockey news. I'm producing about an article a week these days. Shout out to Steve Warren for that opportunity that continues to give me on that. And you know what? No matter what happens, you're watching playoff hockey. That's my message to Sens fans here. Don't worry about the result. This is a step in a process. They were never going to most likely win the cup this year, right? Enjoy watching these players grow before your eyes. The window is just opening.